It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
Welcome, everyone, to the Divas That Care Network. I'm your host, Amy McKenzie. Today's show, The Wow of Women, features the remarkable journeys of women whose powerful and extraordinary choices positively impact people's lives. Today's show is really special. I'm so excited to introduce you to Angelina Rosado, beg your pardon. She's calling in from New York, and let me tell you a little bit about Angelina. I think you'll be very moved by her story. She's from the Lower East Side of New York City. She's a domestic violence survivor, and she now owns a nonprofit. It's a domestic violence organization that helps victims and survivors all over the world. She's committed to ending this cycle. Now, she herself was a victim of domestic violence, and she'll fill us in on that on the show. But she knew she needed to help other survivors of domestic violence, so she started her own project. She is literally the founder and executive director of her nonprofit domestic violence organization called Returning Hope. And I get goosebumps saying it because that's exactly what she's doing, and that's exactly why we have you on the show, to inspire others. Thank you so much for taking the time today, Angelina, to join us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Oh, good. Good morning. Good morning. So, you know, it's a big story here. And before we get to the solutions that you are providing, which are truly inspiring, would you, for the sake of our listeners, you know, especially for those, well, on both sides, those who have or are experiencing this, to maybe find out they're not alone, and also for our listeners who know about domestic violence but don't really have a first-hand experience, you know, unless you know someone or you went through it, of what the impact is on your entire life to have that happen. So if you don't mind, would you mind, I know it's vulnerable and it's personal, but would you mind sharing some of your story with us?
Yes, of course. Basically, that's why I started this journey, is to be able to at least have my story, hopefully allow a victim to hear it and decide that, you know, enough is enough for them. So my domestic violence story actually starts when I was a child. I witnessed domestic violence throughout my life, being raised by a mom who was in a lot of domestic violence relationships. So I became accustomed to seeing things like that. And unfortunately, you know, I wasn't educated on domestic violence, so no one told me that what was right and what was wrong in a relationship. Personally, when I got into a relationship at the age of 15 is when, you know, things weren't right. And I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what it was, though. Like, I knew we weren't supposed to be screaming at each other in each other's faces. I knew I wasn't supposed to be told by another person who isn't a parent of mine that I can and cannot do things. And that's basically where it started at. And it lasts for 8 years. You know, I remember one time going to a job that I had in the Lower East Side called Lower East Side Girl Club, and Safe Horizon came, and I was 15. They first showed me the Power Wheel. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Power and Control Wheel, but it basically breaks down different forms of domestic violence and the way it happens. And that was my first time actually seeing it. And I read through it, and each little bulletin was my life. And I couldn't believe that this was actually my life. And I try to hold on for as long as possible. I later went on and I had a child. So I try to give my child what I didn't have, a family, a mom and a dad and a home. And unfortunately, you know, holding on to that can end up causing more damage to a child than you actually think. And once my daughter had got affected by it, that's when I knew it was time for me to go.
Yeah. Wow. So, so a couple really important points here. One, I just want to highlight the power wheel. This is something people can, I'm not familiar with it. It sounds like something I should be. This is something that people can Google and really get kind of some clarity around, as you said, each bullet point was something that you were experiencing in your life. So is that something they can Google that's in a book form or kind of a graph form?
Yes. So you can definitely Google it. You'll Google power and control wheel, and it'll pop up Google Images right away, and it'll basically break down the different forms of power and control that is domestic violence.
Wow. Okay, power and control wheel, everyone. And if you, whether or not you yourself are going through this, if you know someone else that is, please share that with them. That's really a great tip for us. Thank you. Now, the other thing I want to highlight that you spoke about, and this is probably going to lead more into the present, but, we'll come to is the education that you didn't have. So at what point, here you are, 8 years in, you saw it impacting your daughter, and that was the trigger that was unacceptable for you. Good for you. How did you get out of it? And that couldn't have been easy.
So, no, it actually wasn't. And it's actually, a lot of people think that domestic violence is like black and white. So a lot of people do believe that, hey, you're in a domestic violence relationship. Well, then get out. And getting out is not the easy part. Getting out is actually the most dangerous part of the whole relationship. 7 days after a victim decides to leave is their most dangerous parts of their life, because initially you're telling someone that has complete control over you that you are taking that power back. So it's kind of like a toddler. When you take a toy away from a toddler, what's going to happen? The toddler is going to catch a tantrum. So literally the same thing happens. An abuser is now going to try to figure out, I want my control back. Why is this person telling me I can no longer control them? So they're going to try to do anything in their power to get that control back. Unfortunately, a lot of times it ends up where victims are either killed or seriously hurt. So that is the extreme dangerous part of the whole entire relationship, which is why a lot of victims choose to try not to leave, because they're scared for their life. For me, I decided to basically use an excuse. We live 3,000 miles away, so we were on the West Coast. We were in Las Vegas, and my whole entire family's in New York. So I used the excuse of, my grandma was sick, and I pretty much played it off, which is when I speak to victims, I try to, when we start talking about escape routes and ways to get out, it's a mind game you have to play with them, but you have to keep everything super cool and chill, like nothing's happening. So once I did that, I got on the phone. My uncle, thank God, bought our tickets. I was literally left everything. When I tell you everything but the clothes on my back and my daughter's clothes in our suitcase, I left my whole entire life that I built. And I got on a red eye, and I came back to New York.
Wow, and that was the smartest thing you could do, because anything else would have given you away.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really something. And it's excellent advice, because, yes, you might literally lose your life, be seriously injured, or end up getting lured back and continue that never-ending cycle, which is also what I've seen happen, where it's actually easier to go back than fend off this person if you don't. Not everyone has that kind of escape plan, a place to go. What do you do when someone has no safety net like that anywhere in their life?
Fortunately for New York City, we have our domestic violence shelters that actually need a whole lot of work. You have to.
Okay, let's talk about that too. Okay.
Oh yeah. When getting out, please reach out to any form of domestic violence advocacy that's in where you live at. There's plenty. My organization, Returning Hope, when we get contacted for help, we literally search and research every part where you are, and we find the domestic violence shelters, we find domestic violence people who are advocating for you, and we'll talk to them, figure out what is it that this person can do and how can they get out, because we just want to make sure that this person is safe. So helping them get out of the situation, and we give them the information that they need to continue a life after domestic violence. For me, I went into the New York City homeless department for domestic violence. It was horrendous. If I wasn't such a strong-willed person, I promise to God I would have went back to my situation, because it was horrible, the most horrible experience. And it was actually the reason why, I pushed a little more for Returning Hope. See, Returning Hope was something that was in the works for over 5 years. So I would do my research. I did a lot of research. And when I actually finally went to the shelter system myself, I was like, oh, no. Like, being in it, I knew, like, something had to change. This is not okay. This traumatizing situations that victims already come into it with, and you guys are just re-traumatizing us again, that is not okay. So, I speak on it every chance I get. I've ended up in this room with people who actually help run DHS, which is Department of Homeless Services in New York. I wrote in letters, I've sent emails just to try to make sure that, these people who are hired do have the proper training for the women and men that are domestic violence victims. So, we have a lot of work still left to do, but definitely look into, shelters, look into different organizations that can connect you to places where you can go. So there's a lot of them, especially in New York City. There's definitely a lot, but it has to be out there. It has to be spoken about, and that's the problem that I have. They're not spoken about. So unfortunately, a victim is not going to know that these places are available for them to even get help, due to the fact that no one speaks on it. And domestic violence is so taboo. It's like, why is it taboo? I speak domestic violence to the rooftops. I literally have domestic violence written on my forehead because I speak about it so much. And it's like, I don't want it to be something to be hidden under the rug. Enough is enough. People are dying. Why are we not talking about this? We talk about, cancer every single year with no problem. Cancer is also killing people. Domestic violence is killing people just the same. Unfortunately, these numbers are rising. With the crisis, with our pandemic that just happened, domestic violence was the only crime that kept going up, skyrocket. And it was literally the little bit of time that we were able to even try to focus on domestic violence, and then something else happened, and then it took the focus off of domestic violence again. So it's like, what more has to happen for people to focus and say, okay, this is a real problem. This is a world problem. People are dying. People are being murdered through this, So.
Yeah, you're right. And it gets no airplay. It's so true. It's like, what's wrong? It's not a sexy enough subject for you. You love cop movies. You love, people are all over the racial issue finally. I mean, that's, God knows, so long overdue. But so is this. No question about it. And I think it's a very apt point. When we talk about anything with vigor that involves anybody losing their life over it, whether it's an ailment or a predicament, and yet, even though, I think everyone's aware, everyone saw that there's a rise in domestic violence, it still didn't, I guess, appeal to the media. It still didn't get any front page notice that I saw, or any real obvious support that I could see. I don't see any special funding going out for it through all of these checks that are being printed out of I don't know what.
Right.
So I can see your frustration, and there's no question it's a global issue. It's certainly, and it's not to say that it only happens on one side of the fence. There are men out there that are being abused. Obviously, it's not near the numbers for obvious reasons, but, it is literally across the board. And it's not even necessarily even, gender specific in that regard. It's an issue of, as you say, education. And what I'm hearing and what you're doing with Returning Hope is This isn't just like, hey, we're going to coach you, help you feel better. I mean, you're like during, like literally helping the plan of escape, finding the resources, and then not just leaving them in the dust. Now what are you going to do with your life? Keep going, keep moving. You've got this window of time where it's going to be really hard. Let's get you engaged. I mean, it looks really comprehensive from as soon as someone gets a hold of you, wherever they're at in the process, whether they're just starting it or they've gotten out and they're just trying to figure out life now. You're dealing with all of it. Is that what am I right about that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're absolutely
That's huge.
Right. Returning Hope has, social media has pretty much kind of helped us take off, and we've created different types of support groups. We have a support group for men, so men can feel comfortable with speaking on, the issues that they have, which is seriously, unfortunately, not as shined on as women. I speak to men myself. I speak to victims. I have men victims that call my phone just sometimes trying to vent, and I'm available. I'm always available for a victim. I basically give the support that I wish I actually had. We also have a women's support group that has almost 500 women in it throughout the country. These aren't just women from New York. They're literally from all over. There's women from around the world in our support group. And these women are magnificent. These women help, support, uplift each other for whatever part of stage that they're in. Some women in our support group are still in their domestic violence relationship, and that is fine. We are not here to tell you that you need to leave. That is a decision that has to come from you. That's all that can happen. I can't force anyone to leave the situation that they're in. That literally has to come from within. Now, I'll hold your hand through the whole entire process. Whether you're still going through it, we educate as much as possible. We like to get the names to things. We'll teach you what gaslighting means. We'll teach you what a narcissist is. We'll teach you what an empath is. We'll teach you different things. And we love to allow victims and survivors to understand that what you're feeling is normal. You're not crazy.
Right.
This is a normal feeling. This is a normal process. You're not alone, and that's the problem with a lot of survivors. A lot of them don't want to leave because they do feel alone. They feel as if when they speak, people look at them as if they're crazy, which is why, our biggest thing is survivors helping survivors. When I do events, our volunteers are survivors of domestic violence because I feel that we have a different form of connection. We come from all different walks of life. But this one situation literally connects us. And through the grace of God, we're able to connect through this horrendous situation. But we turn it into something magnificent where, we're sitting here, we're uplifting, we're supporting, we're educating each other. Domestic violence is a situation that happens, but mentally it's something that's a lifetime process. So I call myself a domestic violence conqueror, and although I conquered it because now I'm educating it, that it's always going to be a working process. Women and men both suffer from PTSD after domestic violence. They suffer from anxiety. They get nervous. Sometimes the sound of certain things make them scared, and it's allow people to understand that it's okay and it's normal, and you're not the only one going through that. There's a millions of people throughout the world literally going through the same exact thing. So we hold each other's hands, hand in hand, locked and loaded, ready for each other. And that's the best part, honestly. And that's like my biggest reward that I can get from it. Having victims say, this is something that changes my life. We have virtual support groups where the women come together. And, we speak on things every single week, different topics. We figure out what's our next goal. How are we achieving that goal? Can we help each other achieve that goal? If we can, that's even better because you're not in it alone.
That's right. Well, that makes perfect sense. And I love that, even though you're obviously the work that you can do that's hands-on in New York, there's probably some specific stuff you can do, but it sounds like most of what you have going on here does certainly, in terms of your support group, is international. But in terms of being able to identify resources, it sounds like you're able to cover the whole country because all of this can be done by phone and other forms of communication to be able to make this happen. Is that right? So really anyone can reach you and get your assistance. Is that correct?
Absolutely anyone. Yes, absolutely.
Let's talk about how they can find you through Facebook with Returning Hope.
They can.
Now, if someone's local to you, there's more they could do probably to get involved. So let's talk about first nationally and then locally.
Yeah. So anyone can literally reach us on Facebook, www.facebook.com/returninghope19. It's connected to me all day, every day. I mentor women in Africa who are getting away from their domestic violence situations. And, I never thought that my organization would even reach Africa, but it did.
Right.
And I was able to help victims in Africa find resources in Africa.
It's great.
So it's actually amazing. Locally, we have clothes drives. We're doing our baby shower drive where we are picking 5 pregnant domestic violence victims who have nothing because they just escaped their abuser and they literally have nothing for their newborn. So we've collected a whole bunch of baby things, Pampers, milk, clothes. We've collected baby bags. We've collected wipes. We've collected so much things for these moms to be able to live a better life after domestic violence. And that's literally the whole point. It's like to show the moms that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Like your life doesn't stop at domestic violence, and we're going to help you, and we're going to figure out how is it we can go on. So locally, I'm able to meet up with people. I also teach the youth about domestic violence, so I educate the youth in my communities between Queens and Manhattan on domestic violence. I go to different organizations where I teach the kids and I speak to them, and I do something that I wish that was done for me a little earlier on. I deal with middle school all the way to high school, so from 12 all the way to 18, and I educate the youth. So things like that are a little more hands-on because it's in New York City that I can do.
Right. But that's beautiful because you're who can listen to someone talk about something that they're going through if they haven't been through it. So there you are, the personification of someone who not only got through it, but turned around and made it into something that you could reach a hand down and grab them up and hopefully through that education break the cycle one family at a time by one individual at a time. That's beautiful work that you're doing. So now you're a nonprofit. And you're coming from having left everything you own. Going into a homeless shelter means, yes, thanks for your uncle for getting that ticket, but you literally had to start from horrendous circumstances and scratch your way back. And in the process of that and all the research you've done, wouldn't give up until you could make this available for other people. And here you are now trying to run this nonprofit. Well, not trying to, successfully running a nonprofit that's reaching the world. The only reason trying comes to mind is I thought of the money, right? Nonprofits take money, and you're trying to provide a lot of resources. So what kind of fundraisers? So if somebody's located in New York City, is there hands-on stuff they can do to help you? And if they're not, is there, ways people can contribute to support you?
Yeah, absolutely. People can definitely, there's a lot of things. We do different forms of fundraising. We do awareness. We do domestic violence awareness fundraisers where, we come together and we have an event and people can donate. People can hold their own fundraiser in our honor. That's amazing. We've had, I've had a couple people who I connected through Instagram actually hold fundraisers, and, whatever they collected, they were able to donate to Returning Hope.
Wow.
We basically have we have masks, we have shirts. There's different things that we actually sell that can actually get funds into Returning Hope. We are a smaller organization, so for the bigger names actually usually get the most attention. So, but we're small, but we're doing just the same work. We're working just as hard as all the big name organizations. If not, we're trying to work twice as hard. Twice as trying to get everyone to yeah, it's amazing actually. Anyone wants to donate, definitely look us up on Facebook or Instagram and just connect with us, and we'll be able to give the information, more information on how you can donate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So go to Facebook, you guys. Search Returning Hope 19. If there's for yourself or someone else. We do need to stop putting this under the covers. And when we talk about taboo, it's really taboo for men. Having had some friends that it was hard for them to even admit it to a friend. And that's just got to change. The level of judgment is showing up in all quarters now, and the veil of truth is lifting. The veil that's been hiding the truth, I should say, is lifting, and this is one that really needs the light shown upon it. And I just am so moved by your efforts to make that happen. Before we close out the show, any parting thoughts you'd like to leave with either our listeners or those that might be, really challenged right now themselves with domestic violence?
Yeah, of course. I would just say if there are any victims or survivors listening, just know that you're not alone. Just know that there are people out here helping, trying to help. Anybody can literally reach us, write to us. We have all sorts of support systems. We do have it for men. We have it for the LGBTQ. Unfortunately, that there's not enough light that shines in that community for domestic violence, which is so sad. We are here for everyone. We just want to make sure that we keep talking about domestic violence, scream domestic violence from the rooftops. Stop. If people feel uncomfortable, that's even better. We want you to feel uncomfortable. We want this feeling of, oh God,
right.
Why are we talking about this to happen? We want that to happen so that you can realize that this is a real problem. And domestic violence needs to be in the forefront of the type of problems that we need to hurry up and focus on, because unfortunately it's not. It's usually under the rug, which is why we do the work that we do, and we're going to keep doing it. And, we're so grateful for platforms like yours that allow us to have a voice.
Well, God love you for pulling it out from under the rug. Not comfortable. I love that. Until we get present to the impact and really look it square in the face, we're never going to get real on the court and come up with these solutions to really address it on not just a national scale, but on a global scale. And you're doing just that on your own from your corner of the world, and you're touching the world as a result of your commitment to making a difference. I honor you, I respect you, I acknowledge you, and I thank you for the work you're doing in the world. Thank you so much, Angelina, for joining us on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
In closing, I really want to thank Angelina Rosada. You heard it from the Returning Hope 19. Reach out, offer support. I want to thank all of our listeners. Thanks for making this possible and for spreading these messages that are so important. I want to thank our producer, the founder of Divas That Care Network, Candace Gish. Candace redefines the word diva to mean a courageously self-assured woman. And you can hear in Angelina's story that we don't start out that way. It takes some work. Get that help, reach out, right? Come to the Divas Care Network. We offer women of all walks a platform for sharing their voice in the world. And we invite you to join us. Visit divasthatcare.com. Hear more inspiring stories. And who knows, one of these days, maybe you'll want to add your voice to the conversation. We'd love to have you. Thanks so much, everyone. That's all for now. Signing off. Until next time, have a great night. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.